It's 2003. Don Brash becomes leader of the National Party. Brian Tamaki starts his cute little community cult Destiny Church. Sadly, we lose Possum Bourne and Mark Todd's Olympic horse charisma. Good Shirt Sophie is the single of the year at the New Zealand Music Awards, and Scribe's Stand Up, Not Many double A side is the biggest song of the year. Music videos were absolutely peaking, which is why MediaWorks blew up dusty old TV4 and replaced it with a youth music channel that had Juice TV shaking in its boots. Join us as we remember when C4 exploded onto our screens. Obsolete, isn't it? I mean, hello, it's 2006. Can we move away from the dark ages, please?
Exactly.
Kia ora koutou and welcome to Remember When. It's your weekly dose of pop culture nostalgia and Aotearoa, brought to you by The Real Pod. My name is Janie and I'm joined by the Clark Gayford to my Jackie Brown, Duncan Grieve.
Wow. I suppose I am, aren't I?
You really are. I suppose Clark Gayford is the Clark Gayford to my Jackie Brown as well, though.
Yeah, that's true.
There was a moment in time. Not that kind of moment in time, by the way. We'll get there.
Really explaining it too much there, Jane.
So C4 was a music TV channel. It was it came at a time when, God, as a nation, we really loved music. We really loved New Zealand music. We were still in the monoculture. So a lot of people were watching, and it was a channel that brought a lot of familiar faces to our screens who have gone on to do some pretty exciting things, and then some who have just disappeared into the ether.
It sort of reminds me of a few years after this, like so it was 2003. I think it was about 2005 when we had Close Up, Campbell Live, and Holmes on Prime. And there was a brief period of time when we had C4, Juice, and New Zealand's version of MTV.
Yeah.
And it really gets me, this era, for that kind of peak monoculture where you could have three competing, like, big budget, putting on events, part of the culture, music channels. And I think C4, despite probably, being relatively short-lived compared to some of the others, during its span was the most prominent, had the most kind of culture wrapped around it. You could really it really interacted super well with that kind of New Zealand music scene you were talking about. And watching promos and sort of thinking about where it was, you're just like, that was a real moment.
It was a real moment.
And where would that stuff happen now,
Yeah, and it was around the time as well that it was just like peak big day out and touring, lots of artists coming to the country. So there was lots of access to international artists. C4, I mean, I really meant it when I said Juice TV was shaking in their boots, because up until then they'd had quite a monopoly on music television, and everyone went there first for their video premieres and went there first for their interviews, and then C4 really shook that up.
So Juice TV was run. Was it run by Sky?
Yeah, so that was on Sky. It was Daniel Wrightson, and then C4 was helmed by Andrew Schusterman, who now is the MD at South Pacific Pictures.
And was the head of content at MediaWorks.
He was head of
sort
content.
of three before then.
Yeah, and he also previously was program director at Channel Z. So Channel Z actually had a massive influence on C4. And sadly, both of them went the same way in that they kind of just like slowly petered out.
I mean, to be fair to them, like if you were a youth-focused kind of cultural or music channel or operation in that era, you were always going to struggle, because that audience was naturally the first to move on to something new. That was the whole kind of point of them. So when the internet came along,
Bloody internet.
it basically exploded choice for them and just sort of slowly but inexorably undermined the audience and therefore financial base for those channels. But I think the other thing that made C4 really pop was the fact that it replaced TV4, which was probably, I'm trying to figure out, was it bigger or about the same size as Prime? As our they were our fourth, fifth ranked TV channels, quite a bit behind the big sort of 1, 2, 3. But certainly, that was its lead-in, was as a a big mainstream channel, and then suddenly we get this freely accessible, because this is before Freeview, like just the fact that it was just there, it was number 4 on your remote. It just was like, it was kind of amazing. You get home from school, from uni or whatever, and there's just endless music videos during a time when that was kind of the center of music culture.
And along with that, there was some, it came later on, but some TV programming. So you had like your South Parks and Futurama and that kind of thing. Jackass.
Bit of MTV stuff that they'd bought.
And you had these, it wasn't just endless music videos, you also had these shows that had like little skits in them, and they were presented out of this white studio that essentially was just the host in the room and then a technical director sitting off to the side. It was all extremely lo-fi.
It's about as hi-fi as this podcast, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's what you're describing is where we are right now.
Yeah, but it's interesting what you say about the internet and how that kind of just like blew everything up, because breaking news, the internet changed everything. Because there's like almost no C4 content on the internet, because it was basically the internet speeds being able to handle video. So it's just a lot of it's just gone, like hundreds, thousands of hours of television gone.
It makes you kind of wonder there must be sort of some almost like citizen archivist out there who's got a bunch of gathering dust VHS tapes. Wayne Lewis, are you listening? Because you think about, it's a similar thing with Max TV, which was Auckland's, maybe it was the first music channel, and extraordinary. Like the amount of talent and the kind of creativity that was in that channel. I was in high school when Max TV was on, and I just remember being absolutely shocked by what they were doing on television. There was Cry TV in Christchurch, so there was a whole kind of DIY era that was also prologue to this, and helped inform the sort of chaos of it.
So let's talk about some of the shows that were on there and some of the presenters. So you had Jackie and Clark were the launch hosts. They were the main hosts. They did things like the Homegrown Show, which was a New Zealand music show. They also had a show, I think, called the A-List, I want to say. Like they'd pop up at various stages across the week, and they were the only 2 full-time kind of employees as hosts, and the rest of the hosts came in and did their specialist shows. So you had Camilla Martin, previously from BFM. She may have been doing BFM at the same time, actually.
I think so.
And she did an alternative show. There was James Coleman from Channel Z at the time, who was doing a retro show called Flashbacks. DJ Severe did the Holler Hour, which was hip-hop. Jono Pryor of Jono and Ben fame, he started off doing Amped, which was a rock show. And then he also had this show called the Jono Show, the Jono Project, which then became the Jono and Ben Show ultimately.
Because there was Pulp Sport, which was running in parallel, and ultimately that's what the combination of the Jono Project and Pulp Sport was what became Jono and Ben.
Yeah,
it was an era where there was a kind of a porous boundary between DIY, almost access television. That's where Back of the Wire started, and kind of more. But there was like a nice pipeline to, you make it through here. You can get a show on C4. If the C4 show goes well, you can get on mainstream television. That which you would assume to be quite fertile with sort of YouTube shows, it just doesn't feel particularly functioning the way it was then.
Yeah, like Pop Goes the Weasel. So that was a music quiz show that Jackie Brown hosted. That was put together by some guys I went to university with, who I would never have imagined the trajectory they've ended up on when I think of them back then. But they are the Down Low concept, who are behind 7 Days and a bunch of other highly successful TV shows. So I feel like 7 Days basically took Pop Goes the Weasel, like a lot of.
I mean, they would have learned a lot.
They would have learned a heap.
Just getting to kind of make there are kind of things that would just happen in the process of making a show like that you really need to learn. You do not want to learn with the bright lights of a primetime network show on.
Di Henwood had a show. He was on C4 for a while there. I feel like that was a big stepping block for him in terms of his TV career. Twyla Blakely, obviously, after being on C4, went on to Shortland Street. Huge. There was a show called Steel Mill. I can't remember who. A guy named Greg maybe. It was like a metal-y kind of show. Nick D had the Sound Lab.
He was ex-Max TV.
X-Max TV, X-M2, X all the music TV shows. Siobhan Rakiri had Meaty. You might not remember that. That was like a news break. She'd come in and do music. And Meaty stood for something. I can't remember what it was, but it was an acronym. And Layla Dukia, who hosted the top 40 like countdown chart. You don't remember any of this, do you? You didn't watch it.
Well, no, I did watch it, but I was probably a bit aged out of the kind of glued to it type demo.
At some point, Jackie Brown left C4. She left C4 to pursue a career as the light entertainment reporter for Campbell Live. And then she also was working on the Jackie Brown Diaries. And she needed replacing.
Who is around who sort of looks a bit like Jackie Brown but isn't Jackie Brown?
That'd be me. I was working at the time at Satellite Media where I had been doing Squeeze music show, which was a New Zealand music show. But that had been shut down and I had just signed a contract to start doing like the music content on Vodafone Mobile.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I think you worked on that as well.
I did.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That was such a bleak job because you had like 25 characters, not words, but your word count was measured in characters and it was so short. It was way shorter than a text.
But it paid all right because I took a pay cut to go to C4. I had Andrew Schusterman and Leanne Borrett, who was a producer at the time, like do a secret pickup. Like they drove by my work, like I jumped in the back. They took me to Vulcan Lane where we wouldn't be seen. And we had a secret meeting. They invited me to audition. I didn't realise that no one else was screen testing. And so I screen tested with Clark. And then 5 minutes after I left the building, they rang up to say I had the job, which was very exciting.
Uh-huh.
And then I started on the same day as Joel DeFries, who hosted Select Live for a period.
Speaking of people who've gone on for
He's gone on.
Great,
yeah. I mean,
things.
I'm here at the Real Pod, and he went on to present Blue Peter.
Blue Peter.
Which is an institutional.
If you don't know, I mean, I grew up
children's
in the UK. The Blue Peter was I think it might have actually been the highest rating show in the country. Had like 4 million viewers even relatively recently. And Joel was like this lovely guy. I think, you and I were both friends with him when he was in New Zealand. And he went back to the UK and you're sort of like, he'll probably get a job as a runner or something there. But within, it felt like months, he was hosting the biggest show on TV. And when you're the host of Blue Peter, you become a tabloid fixture because the show is just that big. So he just became this like enormous celebrity. And
no one here really got that. Like it just never became a big thing.
The problem is it's called Blue Peter.
Yeah,
and you
true.
try and it just is almost impossible to imbue that with any importance unless you're literally raised on it.
So he was ex-Channel Z too. He used to call into Bomber's Drive show as Geezer. And that's sort of where he first made his mark as like an 18-year-old. He's very young when he started on C4.
Yeah. But it's amazing to think that of a caller to a show being able to like this is the era we're talking about. That's user-generated content, baby.
I mean, I'm so happy it was him and not Bomber who ended up on C4. So Joel and I both started on the same day, which was Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2005. And our first day on the job, we both were on air. Like, it was madness.
It really is evocative of the sort of, this did have a big audience, but it had a tiny budget. I think the first year was like $4 or $5 million, which, even adjusted for inflation, given the scale of the audience, that's a tiny sum of money.
Well, it's on air, like a lot,
Well, yeah, and it had a big audience. Like it was targeting 15 to 29-year-olds, which feels very narrow now, but back then, if you could get a decent chunk of them, you had a business,
So my time there, I started co-hosting with Clark Gayford. That was a time. I mean, I have so many stories.
Can you tell some?
Well, he threw the most amazing parties at his house. He used to import lights, like LED lights, and he'd have like palm tree lights and flamingos and all this stuff in his backyard. And he would just have these amazing parties. He'd get like his DJ mates from Shapeshifter or whatever, and just a rollicking good time. He was a party boy.
Did you invite me to any of those parties, or no?
Did I what?
Invite me to any of those parties? Because I didn't go to any of those.
You weren't even watching the bloody channel.
Well, yeah, but I would have if I could have gone to the party.
I probably brought you to a party, didn't
No,
I?
I don't think you did.
We travelled a lot. Just moving on. We travelled a lot. We did like lots of stuff at like Southern Amp, Rip-On Festival. There were a lot of festies at the time. Parachute, Big Day Out, all of those things. Met lots of amazing artists, lots of terrible artists. Also, Paul Potts. Remember Paul Potts? He won Britain's Got Talent.
That's right.
I mention him because it's one of the few clips from C4 that we could find on the internet.
Can we listen to that now?
Okay.
Paul Potts, it's lovely to meet you. May I shake your hand? Nice to meet you, sir. You're here because you won a talent show called Britain's Got Talent, which it turns out it does. But it's really only luck you entered in the first place, is that right? I understand there was a flip of a coin?
I mean, I interviewed other people.
Well, I mean, it's just such a dream of a situation for someone in their sort of early mid-20s to just bomb into this fresh channel where you can make it your own. You have to create a shitload of live TV.
Yeah.
Has to go out every day, and you just got to figure it out. What a dream.
But I also did a lot of really embarrassing things. Like there was one promo that I'm very grateful. I actually ultimately net positive that there's not a lot of coverage of C4, or at least my era of C4 on the internet, because there was one where I had to dress up in a Kill Bill outfit and we did a whole kind of like Kill Bill themed promo for our show special features. There was a lot of what we called, literally in the run sheet for the show, we called fruit, and they were like little skits that went into the ad breaks of all sorts of just embarrassing things that we used to do.
Was there a real kind of JP pranky kind of culture?
Yeah, there was a massive pranky culture. We would do things like, get Andrew Schusterman, like tell him that his car had been towed and all that kind of thing, and then you just like shoot him, like just like stomping up the stairs really pissed off. This is our boss, and then just stick him on the telly like that. And
that's good stuff.
The best prank we ever did, though, it wasn't something, it wasn't even for the telly, but we had this, it was terrible, a huge HR issue. But we had, we always used to go into people's emails.
I heard about these.
Yeah, we'd go into people's emails all the time when they left their computers open, and we'd change, we'd auto-change things that they might say. So if they sign off their name and they just like write Clark and then press enter, and it would come up with something funny,
But this was a different era for funny.
This was a different era, and I found out some stuff. Like I stopped going into people's emails when I found out something that like I did not want to know.
What kind of stuff? Just as a blind item.
As a completely blind item, an extramarital situation.
Ooh.
Yeah. Anyway.
And you didn't want to know that?
No, because it put me in a position of knowing this about people.
True.
I don't want to know that. I was happy to suspect it. I don't want to know it. But one of the funniest things we ever did was went into, again, Andrew Schusterman, our bosses, this is the program director for the station. We went into his email. We selected everyone called Andrew in his mailing list, which included someone who was like massive at TVNZ, possibly even one of the heads of TVNZ, and suggested to this group that they start a Club Andy, and trying to just bring back the nickname Andy. And obviously, like, terrible. No one replied for like a week, and then someone replied and was like, great idea. But he was so pissed with us.
You'd be so mad. And
we were like naughty little kids.
If a bunch of people will reply to that immediately, then it kind of works, and it's sort of, but a week of them just thinking, what the hell is wrong with Schusterman?
And for him to realise that there's been a whole week of people where he's not been able to explain, a whole week of people who are thinking that.
He's like, this is a great idea.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
So bad. But yeah, it was the best job ever. I got to do so many fun things, got to like race minis, and the one thing that just jumped into my head that was not great was meeting the hedgehog. What's his name again? Jeremy
Clarkson.
No, the porn guy.
Oh, Ron Jeremy.
He's revolting.
Yeah,
there were a lot of things that we had to do that we probably like. I wouldn't do now. I wouldn't do again. But it was a time. And there's the Tuts. Do you remember that song K that became the theme song? The promos were always a lot of fun. I've got a good little Crimbo promo here that we can show you.
4 Elvises, 3 silly hats, 2 turntables, and David from Hello Man OP.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
But that kind of speaks to the culture of it, right? Like it was born on a budget, but they were trying to make something of this local kind of music, media, young youth scene that there just isn't really a parallel vehicle for in this era. And, I've been talking to some people in and around the music industry now, and they know that were you to launch a C4 now, that it wouldn't work, like the audience is gone, and that there isn't an easy way to replicate it. But they still feel the absence, that sort of space where kind of where the culture could be knitted together and mediated, and you could have some fun with it and get a sense of who are the people behind that single and so on. And nominally, I suppose it's happening on like TikTok or YouTube, but it just doesn't feel like it's got everyone's eyes on it the way that C4 did at the time.
Yeah, and it was never more obvious than when we went to like the X Games or Big Day Out, and you just have, you'd have your tent and your stall there next to the edge and whatever, and just so many people would come up and they'd buy hats and have bumper stickers, and like you'd see C4 bumper stickers on cars. I mean, that was a thing, an era where you like supported the media that you listened to. Remember, like radio station bumper stickers were everywhere for a time.
And they were covered it. Like if you had a BFM sticker, that was a big deal.
After Clark left C4, I started co-hosting with a guy called Phil Boswick, who I ran into at a sushi place last week for the first time in many, 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 many years. He's working in like a building now. And then after I left, Helena McAlpine, who has sadly since passed, she was the lead host there alongside Phil. Some of those people though, like gone on to some big old things, and some of them are doing podcasts talking about
really
their
good podcasts.
Heyday of doing things once upon a time. Oh.
Still, amazing era.
Incredible era. I remember it fondly. Hit me up in the DMs if you want to know more. I had so much fun just researching this because, it took me back to a time and I realised, I didn't even know, but these were like some of the best years of my life, and I wasn't even clocking it at the time,
That's how it tends to go, Jane.
Hey, thank you so much, Duncan.
It's been fun remembering one with you, Jane.
Remembering. Thank you, Samuel. Thank you guys for remembering with us. From the Spinoff Podcast Network, you've been listening to The Real Pod, hosted by me, Jane Yee, along with Alex Casey and, most of the time, Duncan Grieve. Our producers are T.I. Butler and Samuel Robinson. Thanks for listening.